it's always kind of hard to think outside of the box because you are in the box all the time. So I think really forcing yourself to get out of that box and really think and get feedback and maybe opinion from some other people who may be your advisors or mentors has been pretty important for us.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Seven Figure Journey podcast. I'm your host today. My name is Brett Gilliland, and I'm here with Maryna Burushkina, who's the founder and CEO of Growth Channel. Growth Channel is an automated marketing intelligence platform, and um, Maryna and her team have had quite a ride lately. They've grown quickly over the last few years. And I'm just excited to have Maryna here sharing some of her experience, lessons learned, and some of the challenges that they still have. So, Maryna, thank you for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brett. Excited to be here.
Please, Maryna, tell us a little bit more about Growth Channel so our audience can understand exactly what you guys are doing.
Definitely. So with Growth Channel, we have built a technology platform that helps advertisers get on premium channels without any minimum ad spend required and still target very specific audiences. So, for example, if you think about your audience that goes to a specific store or has been looking for a specific product or service in the market, and you don't want to limit yourself to just like social media or Google search, you want to maybe get on Hulu or Netflix or even Twitch, maybe you want to be on a podcast or Spotify music or anything like this. Growth Channel may be a good fit because we really help you connect and get into those premium channels like Fox Business, CNN, Forbes, etc., with the advertisements without any minimum ad spend commitment. So you can advertise even with a smaller budget on those premium sites and still reach the right people.
Sounds like it's working because your business is growing quickly and you're helping other brands grow by getting access to these amazing opportunities. So, thank you again for being here on the show. I want to ask you how long Growth Channel's been in existence. Give people a feel for how quickly you've grown because I want them to have a little context around the size of the team and how much you've grown.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we registered the company about 4 years ago. But as you can imagine, when you register the company, things aren't like magically popping up. So it took us a while to build the technology, to grow the team. So we've been beta testing and building the tech in the first 2 years. Our product went live to public last year. So you can say like we've been actively growing. This is like second year of active growth, and yeah, we are now almost 20 people all together, including full-timers, part-timers, freelancers, etc. We are pretty international as well, so part in the US. I'm based in Austin where we are headquartered, but also another part of our team is international, also covering some of our international advertisers with amazing experts and talent anywhere they are, essentially speaking, because we're also thinking about the remote experience and remote working environment as the best there can be to give enough flexibility for our team and just get the best talent that can be there to join us.
Well, I mean, having grown as fast as you as fast as you have over the last 4 years, for you to say the first couple years were just really developing our platform, that's even more impressive what you've built in the last year. So you're growing quickly, things are starting to move, and that's perfect backdrop for our conversation today because this show is focused on seven-figure businesses that are predominantly in that 1 to 3 million range, and they've started to get, they have 6, 8, 10 people, and they're starting to move. And I would love to hear, Maryna, especially as the founder and CEO, what has been a key help to you, or whether it's a mindset thing or a skill set, what has helped you scale the company to this point that might be of use to another business owner out there?
Yeah, definitely. Well, as a founder and overall as a business owner, it's always kind of hard to think outside of the box because you are in the box all the time. So I think really forcing yourself to get out of that box and really think and get feedback and maybe opinion from some other people who may be your advisors or mentors has been pretty important for us. And some of that feedback has been on, let's say you have different products or services, which ones are the ones that are actually making the revenue, for example, for you, right? Like, let's look at that. And usually it's like 20% of the business making 80% of the revenue. In our case, it's more like 1090. So like really looking at that and just, putting the other thing on the side, even though it's like inside your heart and soul, like just putting it on the side just because the data says so, right? So that's been important. Um, Setup. And then the second component that has been really changing and helping us grow a lot was getting the right team members on board, and really like delegating and trusting the team. And sometimes when you are like, again, a business owner that does so many things, as we all do, it's also sometimes hard to really like get to that point emotionally. So I think those have been really helpful.
I love both of those comments. Thank you for sharing them. Let's go to the first one you said. When you have a I don't know, a passion or desire, or and at first a need to just say yes to anybody who will buy your product or service, right? It's like yes, 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 we'll do that. At some point, and you talked about that 20/80 rule, and you guys are actually more 10/90 right now. At some point, you got to narrow in and say, okay, what is the market telling us is really the most valuable thing we can provide right now, that's providing the opportunity for our business to grow. I love that idea, and I know the real point you made was around advisors and getting help to identify that. But I'd really like to drill down on this a little bit because I think a lot of businesses get to a million by saying yes to lots of things, right? They're like, okay, we got to grow the revenue, so I'm going to say yes to that and yes to that and yes to that. But then it gets more complicated. Your fulfillment gets more complicated. Your marketing can't be as targeted. There's lots of reasons to narrow down and niche. And I just wonder in your business, like, uh, uh, and we can go back to talking about advisors, but how have you gotten clear about where you should focus your energies to create the revenue runway that your business needed?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's more like kind of even forcing yourself to kind of believe in it because you can see the numbers all the time, right? I mean, we look in most cases, we look at them quite often, right?
Hmm.
But then you're still like, but then in the long term, this could still be an opportunity, right? So just kind of putting that to the side sometimes, that idea and that mentality, and like prioritize what is important for your business right now, and where is the current situation, like where is your customers coming from, or like what is that type of customer, or like what service or product is generating that revenue. So really like looking at that and making sure you just kind of park the rest to the side, and it can still be there, like maybe just like reprioritizing. It also depends on your resources. So if you're a small team, you can't just like stretch yourself short. So you really have to focus all the resources you have at these stages to one thing that can help you just multiply. So it's just more of a realization and just kind of getting to that state.
Okay, well, thank you for letting me drill on that a little bit. I'd like to go back to your original point around identifying advisors or benefiting from outside perspective. In this case, it was to help you understand maybe the where the right revenue is. But how did you assemble the right group of advisors? Um, what did they? How do you get the help that you actually need to see these things clearly?
Yeah. So we, as a technology startup, have onboarded a number of investors as well. So some of them are also giving us advice, and then we also have some other folks that have been supporting us in our journey. with introductions, for example. And then obviously we also ask them for certain opinions or people that maybe we seek as potential investors in the future, that we also check in with them and see what they think, from like maybe getting some feedback and really sharing their advice and opinions around the industry trends, etc. So basically sharing, like, for example, this is the situation and like what do you think, A or B or C. And then they, if they all tell you A, then it's most probably, it's most probably A in that case. So that's kind of yeah, it just helps you reassure yourself also in your decision making when multiple people are telling you one thing. So that most probably could be considered as the right path that you can test.
Yeah, yeah, and I've never brought this up in any of our previous episodes yet, but your comment made me remember an old game show called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I think that's what it was called. Anyway, there is a part where the contestant wants to poll the audience, right? They want to ask or
Mhm.
call a friend or ask an expert type of thing. And
I remember that
you
show.
remember, yeah. So your
Yeah.
comment about, if you ask several people and you give them some options and they're all saying the same thing, that's a pretty good indication that that's probably going to serve you well. Now they could all be wrong, and there are comedy sketches about everybody else being wrong even though you knew the answer. But in most cases, advisors, the right kind of advisors, they're not going to steer you off course, especially if you get multiple people saying a similar thing. So good advice, love that. Um, okay, so then you talked about the critical element of bringing people on who can help you, because you can't do it all, and you have to bring the right people in and then trust them, and there's some emotional change, right, that to be able to let go and let other people do those things. So if we could just spend a minute or two talking about what I don't know, how did you emotionally let go? It's so hard for a lot of business owners to let go. There's emotional attachment to that thing that they know how to do or they figured out, and now I got to let it go to somebody else. Like what tips would you give somebody else who's struggling with that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not as new or like, sorry, as experienced in this area, but pretty new still. But definitely it was more of a need in terms of the resources. So, like, I just couldn't time wise, like, allocate any more time. And it just happened to be that the person I was getting on board to help was so experienced that before I even had suggested to do something, they already did it.
Mm,
And then I realized it more and more times. And I was like, well, you can actually just do this whole part. Like, I don't even need to tell you because you know it all. So yeah, that was just kind of getting more experienced people, like smarter maybe even than you in this specific area, um, or at least like maybe on the same level as experienced as you are in the specific area, to help you maybe initially, but then test them during this phase to see if they can actually take it over eventually. So I think that has become a very good part.
well, and one of the keys, I mean, 1 to 3 million, you're really starting to make that transition from somebody who's doing everything to now I got to lead a team. And then from 3 to 10 million, you really have to focus on building a leadership team that can take those functions, um, again, more capably than maybe you could on your own. And that's what you want. You want somebody who's so good at sales that they can take and run that better than you would have, or so good at marketing, or so good at product, or whatever the role is. And so I love that you're sharing with everybody here as you think about bringing people in. Don't just bring somebody who's qualified to do the job. Bring somebody in who will take initiative to lead that function, move it forward better than, hopefully better than you would have anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very happy that I found a few people like that for different functions,
Yeah.
to do that same thing. So yeah, it's been definitely like I'm so happy about that transition. And yeah, I mean, since then we have also grown like their teams, right? So um, it's just kind of multiplying
Yeah, just
since
kinda
then. So
multiplying. When you
it's
do
good.
it right, it just kinda multiplies. Alright, well, let's talk about, let's change gears now and talk about some of the challenges, ongoing challenges. And before we hit record, you had mentioned, even if you've hired some good people, there's still some challenges around hiring either enough people or enough of the right people. And so why don't you tee it up? I don't want to tee up the issue for you, but I'd like to know what has been a challenge to you in your continued growth.
Yeah, so definitely identifying who is that next, best person to join our team is something we are working on. We recently updated our company values that
Okay.
haven't. It's just like was so apparent and kind of interesting moments a few weeks ago. Um, as we were bringing new people, usually we're like, "This is our company values," and I was like, "Well, actually, we haven't really updated this in a very long time." Since like most of our team members right now, so it's a good time to refresh. So we had like a big team meeting where we just all, except me, contributed
Mm,
to the company values, and then I put it together. So I was like the audience in this exercise. And really, we hope that these new company values will also help us kind of filter and find that next best team member to join our team, because there is certain like team dynamics. It's not just about the hard skills. It's also about the way the team works, right? The way we operate, our communication styles, and many other things that come into play, and that you need to make sure that the new person joining the team needs to feel, comfortable, needs to be able to adjust to these dynamics quickly, and because we are also like a startup and similar most probably in small businesses, so oftentimes you need to get new person who will be able to really contribute to the team quickly. So you don't usually have like a few months to just wait and let them feel comfortable. So you really need to get that going as quick as possible. So for that to work, we are really trying to see, okay, what kind of you know values do we want that person to have, or it's not just about previous experience, but like what does that new person look like so that he fits in as soon as possible, and is able to produce and deliver and fit in right away in terms of collaboration, etc.
Marina, you're bringing up such a great issue. It's something that most business owners trip over, they stumble on, and they think that it's just about the skill at first, or even if they kind of know, well, it's skill, but it's also fit with the team. They don't really develop a strong capability around assessing fit with the team, and so they sort of take a gamble every time they hire somebody who has the skill set, and they just hope that it works out. And I've seen that be a recipe for a lot of, if not disaster, certainly slows down the growth and wasted investment in people who are not the right people. And then it's expensive, and they turn them over, and then they got to try again and hope that they get it right. So you've hit on a really important issue. I think it applies to every business out there. How do we get better at identifying, is this person going to be a fit? Not just skill, can they do the job, but will they be a fit with our team? Will they add in a healthy way to our team dynamic, our culture? How quickly can they be acclimated or integrated into our team and feel like they belong? And that's a big deal. So I appreciate that you brought this up. It sounds like you had a set of values, like maybe in the beginning you just kind of did something and like, here's our values, but then you realized maybe that wasn't really your values, and so you recently did the work with the team?
Yeah, so the team evolved since we put the values. I mean, most of the members aren't even there anymore. So I think it's just me and the designer that's still there.
Mm,
And we had six values that's been kind of there for these 4 years, but the team has changed, evolved. So yeah, it was just like, oh, maybe we should update those values.
yeah,
So and it worked really well. So now we have about 10, I think, but they're very consistent. I would say they're not like completely different from what we had before. They're definitely like in line, but those are different types of values. And this is coming from, the current team, what they believe working at Growth Channel means for them and how they see the collaboration and environment and things. So it's really important. And also it's important that I wasn't part of that exercise. So I was just there watching the team like brainstorm and, putting things together on our little slide there. So that's also an important moment there.
Well, Marina, what would it mean to your business if you get this right? Like if you actually learn how to identify people who fit, what does that mean for the business? And if it's easier to ask that the other way, like what if you don't get this right? What if you struggle? You have a hard time bringing the right people in. What does that do to your business? Right? And you can answer either way.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think I have a good answer for it, but yeah, I mean, we'll have to figure it out. So we'll have to try something else.
Yeah, you're like, well, we
So
will
it's
figure it out. No, I
yeah, I mean, like we'll just have to try different strategies. So right now we are hiring for a number of roles. So I would say that our CTO is having, I wouldn't say like exactly hard time, but he's like, has a lot of interviews. So we've got like over 200 applicants for our latest post. And he's like really trying to filter out those applicants with different stages to like really narrow down to maybe just a few that will maybe get to like this last stage. And he obviously doesn't want to have 200 calls with them, right? So it doesn't make sense. So that's, I don't know if it's a good problem to have or not, but like that's, current thing that we're battling in this process. On the other side, for like customer success or like sales development, this is where a lot of other skills and multiple soft and technical skills also have to be present. So we're like really trying to figure out that best fit. So I would say we have a completely different problem there. So we don't have as many applicants, but we are really trying to figure out, where are we going to get the applicants in the right amount for us to even have that assessment going. So it's also kind of different among the different functions.
Sure, sure, but the core issue is the same. If I don't figure
Yeah.
out how to assess for fit, then I'm just gonna be taking a gamble every time that I make an offer, and that could lead to a bunch of wasted time and money, and then we have to do it again if we got it wrong. Not to mention the damage that it creates in your current team. Let's say you have a bunch of A players or even A and B players, and you bring somebody in who's got the skills, can perform at a high level, but they're just messing up the team dynamic or they're hurting the client experience or the customer journey. Like there's some negative impact to that person's presence that can be far reaching damage, right? It's like one of my good friends who is a co-founder of a company that we grew from 7 figures to 100 million, right? Hundreds of people. And he talked about taking a jackhammer to your culture. If you hire people in who don't fit, it's like taking a jackhammer to the foundation of your culture, and it's so it's disruptive and destructive. And so that's why it's such an important issue in my mind, and I appreciate you bringing it up. So let's talk about a couple things. One, and I'm really passionate about helping people get their values right. So I want to commend you, Marina, for stepping back as the owner and inviting the team to participate. That's whether you did that like from an experience standpoint or you lucked out or whatever, that is exactly what you need to do. So good job listening to whoever advised you or just that thought in your mind that said, I'm going to let the team co-create this, right? It's not going to be my own creation alone. So when you invite the team to get involved, you get not only do you get a representative voice from all the team members, but now they're bought in because they created that with you, right? So well done on getting the team involved in the process. Super, super valuable, super important. The caution I would have for you is that 10 values is a little on the high end. And the reason that I'm saying that is you have to be so fanatical about hiring to your values that you're going to hire to them, you're going to lead to them, and you're going to fire to them. And if you have 10 of them, that's 10 filters that you have to hire to and fire to. And so you have to be so consistent with those. If you hire people that are good on like 8 of the values but not all 10, then that's going to create a problem for you if those are really your values, right? So you said you had 6 before and now you have 10. I actually am a fan of having closer to 6 than 10. And if you just did this a few weeks ago, maybe there's still time. Maybe the paint isn't dry or the concrete's not quite dry in that foundation, and you can still make some adjustments. I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to go from 10 to 7 or 8 even and really be consistent with those values than it is to try to be consistent across 10 values. Now, having said that, we operated for a time with 9 values and we did pretty well, but I'll tell you it was really hard to be 100% pure on those 9 values. And when we dialed it back to 7 in our case. I think 5 to 7 is a pretty good sweet spot. When we dialed it back to 7, it was like, no, these are our core values. Like these are non-negotiables. So these are not ideals that someday, let's say that you guys aren't super innovative as a value, but it's like, as an AI powered company, we have to have innovation as one of our values. Maybe that's more like an aspirational value. You can't have a bunch of aspirational values because then you say to everybody on the team, or the team says to each other, hey, we're innovative, but then our behaviors every day are not. And if we say we're something and we're not that, that's a recipe for hypocrisy in our culture. And then people just think, well, we're not really what we say we are, and so they just kind of discount the values. So I know I spoke a lot there because I want not just you but our listeners to understand how critical it is that when we adopt a value, we say this is one of our core values, that we live by this, we hire to it, we fire to it, like this is our core value. When we have one, that it's real and that it's not just things we hope to be someday, because if it's hope we hope someday, it's really hard to create a strong um, cohesive culture that just is able to persist and be healthy. So anyway, sorry for the rant on that, but I'm really passionate about that. Any follow-up questions on values?
I mean, have you seen any like bad examples or very good examples
Yeah.
that you want to talk about when a company would implement company values?
Yeah, have you ever heard of Zappos? Do you know the name Tony
Yeah,
Hsieh? Yeah. Tony
I
passed
know
away,
examples.
a few years back, which was sad, um, but this company that I talked about where we went from 7 figures to 100 million, we were growing our company fast, and we didn't wanna lose our unique culture. We felt like we had something special that we didn't wanna lose, and so we were looking around at companies who had scaled and kept their culture alive and well. And so Zappos at the time had, I don't know, 1,500 people or something, and they still had this really strong culture. And so we went and had a tour of their facility in the Henderson, Las Vegas area, and we had lunch with Tony Hsieh, and they had 10 values. So it can be done with 10. But they were fanatical about it. And they were really good at saying, here's behaviorally what it looks like to live these values. And their hiring process was very, very strong. And so for every one of those values, it had to be a fit before they said yes to a team member. So as long as you're totally committed to those 10 values, it's okay to have 10, but I think it was rare. I don't see a lot of companies that do this well with 10 values. Certainly not more than that. I would don't go to 11 for sure. If anything, pull back a little bit. If you're like, no, this is really us, then good. You know who you are, and it's those 10, and you got to get really good at filtering for all 10 of those elements. Does that help? It wasn't a bad example. It was a
Yeah.
good example.
No, this is really good. It's super helpful. Yeah, I think we're gonna stick with it for a while. Amazon also had lots. They still have it.
Yeah. So it's
So
totally possible,
it,
right? And Amazon, I think it was Amazon that bought Zappos. Um, anyway, one of those online retailers bought Zappos, and they had to be folded into a larger thing. And over time you might lose some of your unique identity, but they did scale quite a far ways on 10 values. So it is possible. I love that you said we're going to try it for a while. And I'm going to use that comment as an opportunity to share with the audience that that's actually a strong recommendation on my part, that you leave it as a draft and you tell people for the next, I don't know, for the next 2 or 3 quarters, we're going to try these on. We created them together. This looks great, but let's actually see how well we can live these values for the next couple of quarters. And in some cases, we might, wordsmith or edit the description of that value. In other cases, you might say, actually, we're not good at that. We may like the idea of that value, but we don't live that. And so you want to give yourself a little flexibility to just try it on for a while. Um, so yeah, I love that comment. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to make that point for everyone else. Uh,
Yeah, of course.
Maryna, I would love, love, love to spend another hour talking about selection process. We're bumping up against time, so let me just make a couple comments. For your CTO who has hundreds of applicants, can't afford to talk to 200, can't have 200 interviews. We know that. So we have to get pretty good at filtering resumes for the skill set, but we don't have a really good mechanism for filtering on values because the resume doesn't reflect the values at all, which is kind of scary. So what I would do is first we gotta sort the whole pile based on skill set, experience, kind of your traditional resume items on can they do the job. We think they can because their resume says this. So the initial pass is going to be that. But even that, let's say you whittle it down to 100 applicants from 200. Like, these are the 100 best resumes. Or maybe you get down to the 20 best resumes. You still don't want to have 20 interviews or, a set of interviews across 20 candidates. So how do you narrow it down even more? I love the practice of what I call a values phone screen. So if I were you, I'd create for each of your values, you're going to pick up the phone and you're going to talk to, let's say you narrow it down to 10 or 20 candidates. I'm not going to tell you how far to narrow it, but you get it down to fewer candidates that you don't want to interview all of them, and you want to find out, are they a values fit? I created this thing called a values phone screen. It takes 7-10 minutes maybe at the most. And you can have a team member do this. It doesn't have to be your CTO, somebody that's dialed into the values and can judge whether or not they're at least worthy of an interview. You get them on the phone and you say, hey, candidate, we looked at your resume. We see there's a potential fit that you might have the experience, but our values are so important to us. We would never bring somebody in that's not a fit with our team, with our culture, what we're trying to build. And we don't want to waste your time with interviewing you if you're not enough of a fit on the values to even, like, if we know you're not a good fit on the values, then we don't want to waste your time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you. Let's pretend, Maryna, we're having this interview. I'm going to say, Maryna, our number one value is we genuinely care. I would like you to tell me what that means to you and give me an example of you living that value. Just 30 seconds. Okay. So for each of the value, and they never go 30 seconds, they might go 45 seconds, right? But you just want them to be brief. So for each of your values, tell me what that value means to you and give me an example of you living that value. Just quick. And if they can't come up with a good example, or if they don't connect with that value in a very energy creating way over the phone or over Zoom, then you know that's the fit there is probably less likely. So anyway, I can't go into that in more detail, but I would recommend a short values phone screen, because that will save your CTO or whoever the hiring manager is. It will save them a ton of time in interviewing the wrong candidates, and it will reduce the risk of hiring the wrong person dramatically. Because if you fall in love with their skill set, this person has the perfect resume, and you invite them in for an interview, usually if you're so excited about the resume, you want to justify your thinking about that. So you come in, you interview, and you're looking for reasons to say yes. Even if you have little red flags come up around values, you're like, but I love the resume. And so I would just do the initial sort on the resume as quickly as we can to make sure that they have the right fit. And then I would have a team member set up these 10, 15-minute phone screens, values phone screens. Um, or you can even build into your selection process little short answer requirements when they apply for the job. Here's a resume, and tell us about this, tell us about that. And you can do a little bit of finding out through the application process to help you narrow it down even more. Anyway, that was a lot. I'm sorry to go long on that, but Maryna, I love the space that you're in right now. You're in this formative stage around who are we as a company? What do we stand for? What are our non-negotiables? Now we get to build a team around that, and it's the best thing ever when you get it right.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. It was interesting to share this experience also with your audience.
Thank you. Maryna, how can people learn more about Growth Channel? If they want to inquire about your services or connect with you online, how would they do that?
Yeah, best way to check our website, growthchannel.com. Or if you want to talk with me directly, you can also reach out on LinkedIn. Just no spam. I
Yes,
get that
no
a lot.
spam. That's right. Okay, growthchannel.com. Connect with Maryna on LinkedIn. Learn more about what she's doing. Her company's amazing. They're helping people get on those cool channels, advertise in ways that don't require the minimum advertising budget that's so frustrating for a lot of smaller companies. Maryna, you've been a great guest. Thank you for having um, the openness to share some of the real things going on in your business.
Thanks, Brett. Have a great day.
Okay, for everybody out there who's listening and who just heard some of this great conversation that I had with Maryna, please comment, like, share, review. Help us get this podcast, these episodes in front of as many seven-figure business owners as possible, because we want to help you all in your growth efforts in your own seven-figure journey. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.